This is Dustin with Dustin's Dollars, and today I'm going to be doing my best to answer a question that I got on my comment on one of my prior videos about from Jay Patel here about what are the major corporations that have invested in Knightscope. I'm also going to speculate a little bit about which ETFs and which funds might buy into Knightscope in the near future and then maybe in the longer term future. Before I get going, let me remind you that I am not a financial advisor or a financial professional of any sort. All opinions I express in this video are mine and do not represent those of any company or any other individual. I do own Knightscope stock. I have a long position in Knightscope. So basically, this video should be for your entertainment purposes only, because I could be wrong about everything I say in this video. You need to do your own research before making any investment decisions. So, Jay, and to all the viewers, by the way, thank you for commenting. Thank you I've had some great comments. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate getting the feedback and the questions. But I'm going to do my best to answer this. And I will say up front, we don't have perfect information, but what we do know is from their filing, Knightscope reports every person or entity, right, a business who owns more than 5% of any class of voting securities. So these are listed out here in the in their most recent filings, and you can see. I think the key. I think Bill in the past, the CEO of Knightscope, has been quoted to say I think there are 28,000 individual investors, and I think he says like 4 major corporations. And I think this is what he's actually referring to. Are these 4 holders right here? We have this Bright Success Capital Limited from Hong Kong. We have Konica Minolta from Japan. We have Netposa Technologies, also a Hong Kong company, and Docomo Innovation Fund Partnership, which is also in Japan. And you can see over here how much of the company how much of these classes of shares they own over here, and then how much of the total voting power of the company that represents. And I did just a little bit of notes, and I tried to figure out what percent of the company each one of these, because these are different classes of shares, right? These are Class A commons, but these are the preferreds, and so I want to take a look and see what percent of the company that represents, because I think the A's, Series A and B, don't quote me on this, I think that those convert into Class B shares, which have 10 times the voting power of Class A shares. So even though over here this might say that Netposa Technologies has 9.91% of the voting power of the company in its holdings, I don't think that actually represents 10% of the company in terms of, let's say, if there were to be a dividend paid, right? Or if they want to actually trade those shares, if they convert them all to the tradable Class A shares, I do not think it would be 9.91%. I think it would be 1/10 of that ish, something to that effect, right? Because I think that you'd eventually have to convert them to the Class A's instead of the Class B's and lose out on that extra voting power in order to trade them. But so in terms of the actual kind of like as converted to Class A shares, if I did the math correctly, this Bright Success owns about 3% of the company. And then the other one, he mentions Bill mentions those 4 corporations, but he doesn't mention this. There's an individual, Andrew Brown in New Jersey, who owns 1.4 million shares. And that is, at the time of this filing, was more than 5% of the Class A commons. So this Andrew Brown had to be listed here in their filing. Now, I actually think that Andrew Brown does not own more than 5% of the Class A commons anymore because of the offering and because of everybody who has converted since then. Because I think if that was the case, that he owned more than 5%, I think we would see a Form 13G. Sorry, don't quote me on that. I think a Form 13 of some sort. I think there's 13G and 13D that have slightly different meanings that Andrew would have to file with the SEC in order to stay in compliance. So let me go through real quick. There's also, like I said, Konica Minolta, I think, owns about 2.5% of the as converted to Class A shares. Netposa owns about 4%, and then this Docomo Innovation Fund Partnership owns about 3%. So I thought that was interesting. I did want to talk a little about these companies. Some of them are interesting. I really don't have anything else to add for Tacomo or for this Bright Success Capital. I did want to at least say something about the NetPosa technologies, because this was actually mentioned in a recent Barron's article. I actually didn't open it. Let me have the link here, though. Let's see if it will actually open for me. It's not a paywall or anything. But this was mentioned in this Barron's article, and they made a bit of an implication. I can't read it here. Sorry, but I actually have the quote here, so you'll have to take my word for it. You can find this article yourself and try to read it. Knightscope stock, like its security robots, has its ups and downs. And somewhere in there, they mentioned NetPosa, and they said, since Knightscope's first prospectus in 2016, the largest outside holder of its shares has been a Hong Kong unit of Beijing's NetPosa Technologies, with holdings ranging from 18% to a recent 9% of Knightscope stock, which I'm not sure if that was correct. They're saying they own 9% of the voting power, so I guess that's kind of true. Anyways, they go on to say, in December 2021, the U.S. Department of the Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control sanctioned NetPosa because they gave the Chinese government facial recognition technology that was used for something. Anyways, they so they sort of try to draw that they made this out with a very, very strong negative connotation that this was a negative thing. Bill on Start Engine, actually, someone asked him, "Hey, what is going on? What is your business with NetPosa?" And which, by the way, I did a little bit, just a tiny bit of Googling on the company. It looks like there's some sort of a technology security company over there in China or Hong Kong, not 100% sure. So them investing in a company like Knightscope, I think, is oh, what happened to my video? Well, I think Mike's still working. Sorry about that. You can't see me. You probably don't care. But I think they yeah, so Bill responded there, and he said Knightscope has no transactional business with any NetPosa company except the 2015 investment made by a Hong Kong affiliate, where the 2021 trade restrictions do not apply, right? And the point that I was just making is, I think investing in Knightscope is a pretty straightforward company for them to have been invested in. I think, I'm guessing, since they had these Series B stocks, the preferred stocks, I'm guessing they got in pretty early. So I actually don't know how much money 13% of those Series B stocks would have represented. This might have been a very, very small amount of money compared to the size of that company, because Knightscope would have been, I think, much smaller at the point that they invested that. So anyways, and like I said before, in a prior video, the insiders of the actual company, the executives, basically have a majority of the voting power. So even if another company holds 9.9%, that's really doesn't give them a whole lot of sway when insiders already can have a majority. So I didn't really think that was anything to be too concerned about. One other interesting note here is Konica Minolta. They have another relationship with Knightscope, which is Konica Minolta helps service the robots. And this was a couple years ago, I think. I think Knightscope started out and they were targeting like California, the place, the area, geographic area around where they were. And then now that they have, they're selling across the entire United States, they have contracted, they have a relationship with Konica Minolta to actually go out and do some of the service on their robots, right? And they say, hey, Konica Minolta has over 2,000 technicians across the United States. And so Knightscope has a relationship with them to do that. So I think that's actually interesting, that Konica Minolta is providing these services, is also a shareholder in the company. And I think that probably gives them, a little bit of an incentive to make sure that they do a good job and to actually care about Knightscope in a way that they might not for another company of similar size, right? Knightscope is not exactly huge in terms of what they do, right? They're a startup, but I think this will help ensure that Knightscope actually has a long-standing relationship with them and gets the time of day, I guess. So that is my best answer of which corporations and which funds currently hold Knightscope stock. And from my understanding, as I alluded to before, I think if there was a new fund or a new company that bought into Knightscope and held 5% of their stock or more, I think they would have to file a form, like I said, a form 13G or 13D, and then that would, we would all see that filing go through, and then we would get to see every trade that they make. I think at that point, I think once you become at least a 5% holder, you have to file every time you make a new trade within a certain amount of days. So if there were more than these folks, I think we would see those filings by now. And if they buy in the future, we will see those filings when they happen. So the other part of this video, this is a bit more speculative, but I think there are going to be some other, in the not so distant future, probably some ETFs and some funds that will be buying in. Now, I'm not saying they're going to be buying in 5% of the company for each of these funds. I mean, that would be ridiculous. But there are some ETFs and funds out there that I think I'm pretty sure are going to be buying Knightscope stock. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to be a huge amount of the stock, but we have funds out there like the total stock market ETFs that I think are going to be buying in. You also have like the Russell 2000, right? I think these are like 2000 small cap stocks. And again, I don't know. I'm not 100% sure what is the criteria for being included in the Russell 2000. Sometimes they have slightly different criteria than just the market cap of the company. And I don't know if we don't know what Knightscope's market cap is going to be when they do these considerations of who to add into those indexes, because a lot of these indexes actually add new companies or remove companies on a quarterly basis. And so, we might see some of this happen at the end of March or beginning of April, where Knightscope might get added in. I think that's actually also true for the Vanguard total stock market. I think I saw that somewhere, although not 100% sure. Then that gets me on to a couple of the other funds that might buy into Knightscope because of the nature of their company, right? Because they are a robotics company. I think the two major ones that I found were ARC-Q. I this is part of ARK Invest, Kathy Wood's investment firm, and they have an autonomous technology and robotics ETF, and I could easily see them wanting to buy into Knightscope, especially if the company starts showing some growth. And there's also there's a robo ETF, a global robotics and automation ETF, and I have to imagine that Knightscope fits that criteria pretty well. So that'll be interesting. Now, I did a little bit of speculative math on how much Vanguard might buy because of this, how much some of these other small cap ETFs might buy, and I think this is again my guess, and we'll come back and maybe evaluate this in the future. But I think in a year's time, if just with these indexes, I think we'll end up seeing about 5% of the float being held, 5% of Knightscope shares being held by some of these sort of passive funds. Between the passive funds and between the robo ETF, the ARC-Q I think is a lot more actively managed, and so it's going to be a question of whether they evaluate Knightscope and think that it's worth investing in or not. So we'll see, but I think that could have an impact on the Knightscope share price. With all that sort of price insensitive buying that would go on to add the Knightscope shares to those funds and those ETFs. So yeah, that's my again. I think we're going to see at least 3% of the shares locked up in those. I mean, I think the Vanguard one is going to be probably almost 2% of the company, just as it is. And then again, you have some of these other small caps that are going to add some more. If I was to put a tighter range on it, I'd say probably between 5 to 8%. A year from now, we might see that that amount of the company being held by some of these ETFs. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to cover today. Hopefully, Jay, hopefully that answered your question, and I will see y'all later.